Good evening, and thank you all for your patience. You notice I stayed over here when the technology people were working, because if I just get close to it, it gets tougher to fix. But we do appreciate y'all being here. This is probably the next to the last meeting that we will have as a committee. And this committee has had a couple of different names, but it's really the Public Safety Advisory Commission's Subpoena Power Committee. And these volunteers have been working very, very hard for about a year on trying to sort through some of these things and get everything just right. I'm going to ask, before we get started, Pastor Chester, Reverend Adrian Chester, to lead us in prayer before we get going.
Let us pray. God, our help in ages past, you are our hope for years to come. God, you've been our shelter from life's stormy blast, and you are our eternal home. God, in this moment, we ask that you grant unto us your wisdom, your spirit, and your insight as we seek to come to a solution that serves your people and serves as a written example of how you desire for us to live in harmony with one another. Bless our deliberations this night. Give us your grace, your wisdom, and your patience. It's in the name of Jesus we do pray, and we all said, amen.
Thank you, sir. I'm Skip Henderson, and I'll kind of give a very, very short backdrop on how this committee got put together and how we got to where we are, and then we'll turn it over to the committee, because it's important to understand I'm not on the committee. Neither is the city attorney's office. We're simply here to help facilitate the meeting and to answer any questions if asked. We do not editorialize. We do not give opinions. We simply are here to try to help the meeting move along. All of these individuals that are around the table, though, have really been doing a lot of work and done a good job in trying to move this forward. It kind of got started when we had two ordinances that were before council, that were presented to council, with regards to citizen oversight of the police department. One was a new ordinance that had a new citizen oversight committee that would have subpoena powers. The other one was utilizing the existing Public Safety Advisory Commission without subpoena powers. So Councilors Barnes, who is not with us, he's under the weather this evening, and Councilor Garrett and Councilor Thomas, who is also recovering from some surgery. They decided that there should be a way to come up with a compromise. Councilor Barnes and Councilor Garrett actually worked out a rough compromise that they thought might work between the two ordinances, and they asked me to put together a committee. And these individuals, I asked them to serve, and they graciously said they would. So this committee's purpose is really to listen to the public, to take a look at the materials that have been presented and have been tweaked, because they have tweaked them and worked them closer to where we are right now, and for them to just simply make a determination that yes, there was a consensus, they could all get behind the compromise, or no, they couldn't, and that was it. And then of course that's non-binding on council, but council wanted that input from this committee so that they would hear from a broader section of the community. This is not your last chance to be able to provide input. There will likely be one more public meeting like this, and largely because a couple of the key cornerstone members of this committee could not be here tonight, and they deserve to be here to hear your comments and your thoughts firsthand. And then there'll be one more where this group works through all the input that you've given them, takes a look at the final recommendation that they had voted on, and make a determination if they can come to a unanimous consensus on passing it forward to council with a recommendation. And at that point, then council will have a number of options that they can choose from. So what we'll do is we will, so that you have a little bit of background on the Public Safety Advisory Commission, Tyson Begley, and let me tell you who's with us tonight. Councilor Walker Garrett is with us. Pastor Adrian Chester is with us. Lucy Sheftal from the City Attorney's Office is here to provide any answers to any legal questions. Tyson Begley is a former chair of the Public Safety Advisory Commission. He was when this started. Ms. Shamika Averett, and of course State Rep Carolyn Hughley is with us, as is our police chief, Freddie Blackman. So we strive to have a very balanced group that would very respectfully communicate with one another, and that's what we have seen. The two missing, as I mentioned, the counselors Pop Barnes and Judy Thomas. So with that, I'm going to ask Tyson Begley, if he would, to kind of give us sort of a run-through on the Public Safety Advisory Commission. And let me just say to the panelists, the mics are hot, so if you want to speak, just hit the button right underneath your microphone and you'll be active immediately. And once we go through all this, the intent is to open it up for comments, and we'll do it somewhat like we do at council meetings. Everybody, to be respectful of all the people that want to speak, we'll ask you to hold it to 3 minutes, and we've got a timer that we can kind of watch after, and then we'll make sure that your opportunity to provide input is available.
Good evening, everyone. So as the mayor mentioned, I was the chair of Public Safety Advisory Commission for 3 years. I was on it when this commission started. Obviously understood a lot of our processes, what we were currently doing, and understood kind of the pain points of what we wanted to improve. Just want to give a little bit of background about what the commission was doing while I was chair, kind of things we focused on, our process, just to provide some context. So when we're reviewing possible changes to the committee, just to provide that background of what was already in place. So I'll start with just a brief timeline. I don't want to get too much into the details, but it was started in 2004. That was defined in 2004. And then there was referral power in 2011. Basically, we could refer to a complaint to a citizen head. It really worked more in kind of the relationships. Everyone has a relationship. They were nominated by a city council member, and so everyone can get their voice heard through city council, and citizens could come to the group and have a complaint. They could hear them out. But really, we tried to look at how do we take some of these issues and either inform the public or improve the processes. Just a reminder, the mission statement was to recommend resources, public safety practices, and policies and citizens' responsibility needed to achieve a safer community to the mayor, city council, and public safety departments. And so there's sometimes we had people come in and would have a complaint, and we said, hey, you really just need to understand better what the processes are. The other times we had complaints, we'd talk to the public safety departments and say, hey, this is what we're hearing. And sometimes they can say, hey, this is something we can fix. We understand what you're saying, we understand the disconnect, and how do we improve that? So I'm just going to give a little bit more background. I know this is a little bit hard to read. But a lot of times the way we went through this, people would bring up questions, right? Like, why is this happening? I'm frustrated with this. And so we'd have questions about, is there a process in place? How did this issue come about? Yes, sir. Oh. Is this better? Okay. And so we'd research further, right? So we had that citizen's complaint. Would it happen again? Is there anything we can prevent it from happening again? And then once we did some research, we tried to communicate what we thought the solution was. I'm sorry this is not showing up well, but we did have a lot of guidelines, be punctual, be respectful of others, not to have a soapbox. We tried to keep comments to kind of brief. It worked as well as we could, but it was a very respectful group of people. So one thing we did work on trying to start a conversation about the Marshal and Sheriff Department consolidation. It was the most frequent question we received, and so we did a write-up and did some analysis about how there could be synergies and what we thought was the best approach. We also had citizens complain that they were a victim and they were frustrated because they weren't getting a timely response from the city. And so what we did was really look at the information they should have and put a page on the website so that even before the city could respond 24 hours a day, they could go to the website, get some of their initial questions answered so they would understand their rights as a victim and understand just kind of the process of going through the court system. that's not intuitive to a normal citizen. A couple of other things, we heard that officers would have someone that was homeless and try to figure out what to do with them, and they were spending a lot of time doing this. And so we put them in touch with the United Way, their 211 program, so they could understand, their homeless intake system. So instead of driving around trying to find help, they could go with the existing resource of the United Way for that intake. Again, I'm sorry this is not showing up, but this is from a year ago. So they had the past police chief, the previous sheriff, as well as Senator Randy Robertson. We also got crime prevention and New Horizons. There were a lot of questions about how do we get more money for crime prevention? A lot of the crime prevention initiatives seem to work. How do we put more money into those services? And then New Horizons, they help a lot of people in jail. What are they doing? Some of the people who had mental health conditions were ending up back in jail. Is there a way to break that cycle? So it was an organization that was very organized. It was process-oriented. We had a great diversity. It's not a group that needs or requires a public safety background, right? So we had some attorneys, some former police officers. We also had citizens like myself who, my day job's a CFO. We had other people who were, like I said, attorneys, and other people who were just concerned citizens, right? So you didn't have to have a background. And I think that's what made it helpful. You'd get the legal opinion of the attorney, and then you'd get the informed decision of a former police officer, and then you had other citizens who just said that this doesn't feel right, this looks funny. There are the current members, as I mentioned, I rolled off last October, but what they've been focused on right now is, one is communications. I know that I feel like we were successful a lot of times when we received an issue, but a lot of citizens weren't aware of the Public Safety Advisory Commission. And so I know the current group is really focused on making more of the citizens aware of the group. And they're also focused on getting more training. One of the ordinance changes that Lucy's going to speak to is getting the committee more informed. And so they're currently taking more training so that when they have these discussions, they're more informed. And so it is evolving to make it more informed and just make the public more aware of the committee and what they're doing. So that's really my part for explaining the existing committee. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Okay, and the Assistant City Attorney is going to kind of talk a little bit about some of the way that the PSAC has evolved and some of their powers have changed and increased. And also, she's going to go through the compromise, the final compromise ordinance that had been kind of tweaked and added to, and some things changed by this group.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just a quick question, if possible, or to ask the audience if there are any current members of the Public Safety Advisory Commission present. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Good evening. Excuse part of my back, but I think you'll hear me better if I stay on this side of the lectern. As the mayor said, the Public Safety Committee has been working since September to craft an ordinance that would address a compromise between the subpoena or no subpoena alternatives to Public Safety Commission investigations. So let me start by taking you through what the law is now and where the proposed compromise would change the existing ordinance. And you're going to be seeing the changes in red if you follow along on the PowerPoint. The first things have been in the law. They're not changing the general language about the duties and objectives of the commission, just like Tyson was talking about. And when we, get down to the end, we're going to, of the list of provisions on the commission, we are recommending, the committee's looking at striking 2 provisions, and what those provisions did was provide that the Public Safety Advisory Commission had no authority to investigate specific incidents or specific personnel with respect to police activity. And so this is a change to take away that prohibition. And another suggestion that has come forward in all the alternatives is that we would add a new requirement of the Public Safety Advisory Commission board members that they all complete Columbus Police Department Citizens Law Enforcement Academy CLIA training within the first 12 months of their service. And then to get to the most important part, a whole new code section would be added to the Columbus Code under this proposal that would provide the procedures for conducting case reviews of closed investigations. And that's the new authority. The commission shall have the authority to review closed investigations where a use of force by any member of the Columbus Police Department is reported. For purposes of this ordinance, an investigation is closed when it is complete and all direct litigation involving such investigation or prosecution has become final or otherwise terminated. After conducting such an investigation, the commission may present written recommendations to the mayor as to any matter relevant to the investigation, including recommendations as to further disciplinary action or termination of sworn personnel. Such recommendations shall not be binding on the mayor, but he may adopt them or refer them to the appropriate direct police chief or other police administrators. The investigation will be facilitated, and in fact, this is something that is already happening voluntarily. The chief of police is providing the commission with a monthly report on all closed cases involving uses of force by any member of the Columbus Police Department. And that is something they're doing. That is how the commission will, have the data without requesting anything to make a determination if there's something that they might need to pursue in the way of an investigation. And then finally, in this paragraph D, we get down to the crux of the matter, which is the subpoena. And after much discussion, as I said, the committee has been meeting since September, and almost every word of this section D has been looked at, and the proposal at this point, pending y'all's input, is that any member of the commission may request the issuance of a subpoena by a majority vote of the entire Columbus Council for witnesses or documents relevant to any investigation or review by the commission. And it's very important that the council vote to issue the subpoena, because the subpoena power we're drawing on here is found in the Columbus Charter and is specifically granted to the Columbus Council. Are there any questions? Thank you.
So one thing I want to point out, when I was on the Public Safety Advisory Commission, we didn't receive those use of force reports. So if a citizen came to us and said, this was an issue, we could review it, we could do the public records request, and we could escalate it to council. But that was after the fact. This is much more proactive. There's much more transparency. By automatically providing those use of force reports, the Public Safety Advisory Commission now has a responsibility to review that information, and I think that transparency makes a big difference. And really, it doesn't create any additional cost for the city, and so the transparency that's being added plus no cost, I think, makes it very appealing, not only for Columbus, but for other cities as well.
Well, and just to piggyback on that, I just want to say that as soon as we started talking about that and how it would be facilitated with getting that information to the commission, the chief and I spoke, and he felt like we ought to be doing that now. So that's been going on since, as the assistant city attorney mentioned, since the inception of this committee. I'm sorry. Ms. Hughley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Madam City Attorney, you spoke about the fact that the City Council is reserved with the authority for subpoena power. And would you speak to whether or not there's any other way for them to grant that authority for subpoena other than through vote?
Given existing case law in the state and also our specific charter setup, this is certainly the legally most appropriate way to handle the subpoena matter.
All right, if there are any other comments or questions around the table, we'll hear from those, and then we'll invite you to the microphone.
So, Mr. Mayor, and those preparing to speak, just a question to the Assistant City Attorney. So just for the laypersons in the room, such as myself, if we wanted to adjust anything as it relates to the code regarding subpoena power, that there would need to be a revision in the city charter stating specifically that?
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much.
And just to be clear, the proposed changes I went through will require an ordinance of council. So we will be, council would look at the ordinance the committee sent and recommended
Mr.
after
Broadway,
public
you can use
input.
that right there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Is it working? I was trying to direct you to the one that Mike said you need to use.
Mr. Mayor, just for clarity purposes, I remember coming to a meeting we had in the Civic Center, and the subpoena power was the crux of the matter, bottom line. That's why I think all these folks are here anyway. I didn't hear a clear answer, Madam City Attorney, on the answer that Representative Hughley asked. Bottom line, if the council says no, that's the end, there's no other recourse for subpoena power for the commission.
That is correct.
Thank you. One last question. So I know there was a lot of, forgive me, Marvin Broadwater Sr., but there was a lot of dialogue that you all had at that last meeting concerning subpoena power. So this is the actual resolution that you all came up with today, what we're hearing today. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Pat Hughley Green, and my question was going to be similar to Mr. Broadwater, but if the Personnel Review Council has subpoena power, and this Public Safety Commission, you're saying there's no way legally for them to have subpoena power, which is my request before I forget to say that you go back and reconsider granting subpoena power for the Public Safety Commission. But if the commission, if the recommendation comes from the commission to council that they want to request a subpoena, and if it's something that's controversial and council members are all elected and they can't seem to find their way past their politics to grant the request from the Public Safety Commission and deny the request, then I don't understand, where do you go from there if it's a controversial issue and politics starts to get in the way? So to avoid that, my request is to simply reconsider and give the Public Safety Commission subpoena powers.
I know you want me back there, Mayor, but I need my laptop. I cannot
No,
remember
you come on.
everything that I want to say. Good evening.
And I'll start, what I've been doing is just starting the timer for the 3 minutes.
Okay. Good evening. I am Tonza Thomas, and I'm the chair of the Muskogee County Democratic Committee. If you are a member of the Muskogee County Democratic Committee, would you please stand in solidarity? Thank you. We are here for the option of the ordinance to have one Public Safety Advisory Commission member and one City Council member to have subpoena power to address police misconduct in Muskogee County. As we begin our 2021 summer outreach campaign, please be mindful that elections have consequences. Today we stand inside of the walls of justice, but keep in mind the progressive words of Dr. Angela Davis. Walls turned sideways are bridges. And so we call on Mayor Henderson and our city councilors to make Columbus the city of champions for justice and restore the relationships between the citizens and our public safety community. As we begin looking throughout the city and finding all the issues, we are sure that the Hector Ariello case is about to come. The money from the civil lawsuit, possibly a civil lawsuit from his family, will be paid by taxpayers, and we are taxpayers. And so it's y'all's fiduciary responsibility to make sure that our money is spent accordingly. In 2016, we visited with the Atlanta Citizens Review Commission, and it was City Councilor Bruce Huff, Dr. Hudd, Sheriff Countryman, myself, Freddie Williams, and the late Brother Love. And it was amazing how city and citizens work together to alleviate these problems. We don't need this in Columbus. We've had a Kenneth Walker. We've had a Tony Carr. We have a Hector Ariello. We need to stop these hashtags, and we need to do something other than march. And so if you are sitting in these seats, we're asking you to please speak with the city attorney and come up with an option to give the citizens what they want. We, the people, elected y'all to sit in those seats. Y'all are just sitting there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. And I'll remind you too that the comments tonight are to the committee that are making these recommendations. So.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hickey, how are you?
Committee. Those who don't know me, my name is Byron Hickey. I currently serve on the Public Safety Advisory Commission for District 1, and also I am a retired police detective with the Columbus Police Department for over 30 years of service. I'm here today to ask that this committee, as well as council, support option number 3, whereas the power to request for a subpoena for the commission, Public Safety Advisory Commission, can come from one committee member, one commission member, and it can be asked for by one council member. I can appreciate what Chief Blackman is doing now with the commission by allowing us to review these use of forces that are taking place, that's taking place. But I'm here to tell you today that oversight is needed. I worked there for over 30 years. I've seen things happen and things get pushed under the rug. Now, whether or not Chief Blackman, I trust that he will hold people accountable, but I'm here to say that having oversight is just another set of eyes that we can have in place that can help oversee the actions and behavior of those in public safety and law enforcement in our community. I ask that we support the idea of giving one commission member the authority to call for a subpoena and also 1 council person. And to the Assistant City Attorney, I piggyback on Ms. Pat Hughley Green. Currently, we have in place under the charter where the Personnel Review Board, they can call for a subpoena through the clerk of council. And council will have to approve that once they get that request from the Personnel Review Board. And I would venture to say that there have been this idea circulating through our community and through our law enforcement community that this commission, the Public Safety Advisory Commission, that we're here to attack and to go after police officers and law enforcement. That is not the case. It's all about accountability. We're not here to attack anybody and to go after anybody. And presently, my wife, she's still a police detective with the Columbus Police Department. And me working there for 30 years, it's no way that I would be in favor of attacking and going after a person who's in the law enforcement community. But if they do something that they don't have any business doing, they need to be held accountable. So all I ask, I know my 3 minutes are up, so all I ask is for the support, and for anybody to think that this commission currently don't have the people capable of making the decision about a subpoena. We have 2 attorneys and 3 retired police officers, law enforcement people that we know of right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Byron, I did want to mention the oversight process. I know we're excited. We have a new chief, but he's not always going to be there. So I think that's why it's important we put these processes in place for oversight. So regardless of who the chief is now or later, we have that additional transparency. And so I appreciate those thoughts, Byron.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor, committee members. I am Vicki Williams-Wiley. And first of all, I would like to commend you all for the hard work that you all have done to get us to this point. And I want to encourage you to get us to the next point. I totally agree with what has been stated by Mr. Hickey and also by Ms. Hughley Green. We need you all to get us to the final step in the process. You've done great work. We recognize that. Do we not? We recognize that. You have. But at this point, we need to push a little farther. We're not here, like it has been previously stated, we respect authority, we respect our law enforcement officers, we do. Our desire is complete accountability. And I stand today for those who were not able to be here, who feel as though they are voiceless. They are not. I stand today for them, and I want to encourage you all to hear us and understand our position here. We want one city, one city, one city. That is what we want. So help us to get to that one city, that great city, Columbus, Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? Dr. Hood, welcome.
3 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm going to be very, very brief relative to my usual dissertations. But I just want to say, I think there's some things I just want to put a moral flavor in context. The same people that elected you all will also be reflective of the people who will serve on these boards. They're not somebody going to come from outer space. Another thing is that we are at a point in our history where we have to do some resurrection in Columbus, Georgia. Some social, some cultural, some physical, because we're at that point, we're talking about new government centers. And now, what we're saying is that we need to go into this new era as one Columbus. So therefore, trust begets trust. In other words, if you all, and this is what people tell me on the streets, if you all can't trust us to review a high schooler who can have a gun and can be judge, jury, and executioner on the street, if you can't trust us as citizens who pay the salaries of them all, how can we trust you with more money and splice, et cetera, et cetera? So trust begets trust. So we're saying let's move into a new pact, a new contract of trust. Because at the end of the day, we are the ones, the citizens, that are saying that we want more accountability. And if government is by the people and for the people, we're saying for the people mean we think at this point we can help you establish the credibility that our law enforcement and sheriff department requires by showing that you trust us to also elect and assure that the people on these boards, regardless of not just this one but others, will be there for the purpose of assuring that one Columbus will grow as one Columbus.
Thank you, sir. Welcome, Ms. Elamine. You've got...
Yesterday was my birthday. I turned 73 years old, so I just drove in from Atlanta. And I've been looking forward to this moment, so I've done a lot of thinking about it. On that day, when people wanted to try some other way than to straight out give the subpoena power, and Walker Garrett went over and whispered to Pops Barnes, and suddenly Pop Barnes seemed to capitulate and say we would have what you are doing now. Well, in 2022, seats 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and the mayor's office is up. This is an accountability moment. See, with all the murders we've had, we have an inadequate police force. We have so many unsolved murders, and the way the pattern is going, we could be at 70-some murders by the end of the year. But more importantly, when we have cases like Hector Arreola, where he's had to wait so long for justice, and he was killed while in police custody. So his family members have been fighting for justice for a very long time, and it's time for the city to provide the reparations they deserve. Can't bring Hector back, but part of subpoena power is when the police do something like that, we should be able to gather all the information and all the witnesses we can get. And that means subpoenaing people. Mr. Walker Garrett, I know you're a big supporter of the police and you have represented them many times, but the people need to have subpoena power. They're trying for it in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They're trying for it all over the country because people know that police do things like what Derek Chauvin did to George Floyd, out in the open. But it's rare that they get the kind of time that Derek Chauvin got. But they are starting to get time. We need subpoena power because we need to know why people have done what they've done. We saw it in real time with Derek Chauvin. It was no question. The verdict was an obvious verdict.
Ms. Elamine, I'm sorry. Thank you.
How much time do we have?
3 minutes.
Oh. Well, somebody has to give me the warning. See, like you do at the city council meeting?
I'm sorry. We set the guidelines based on the request of the committee.
Well, I know, but I walked up and I didn't know. So you have to say, Ms. Elamine, you got 3 minutes. Otherwise,
Ms.
I
Elamy?
think it's 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you.
To the mayor of this city, to this group of officials in whatever capacity. Accountability is something that should run deep in each and every person. When we look at accountability, we look at the cause that would make one become accountable. His actions, desires, lack of both. I look at our new police chief. I look up to him because he came in and there have been a lot of changes. Look at the sheriff department. Look at the merging of 2 departments. I don't want it to be this city, talking about one Columbus, I should say that. I don't want it to be where we are clashing with those who are in charge of government seats. We know that there will be elections coming. That is not the focus right now. The focus is to amend those things that have been broken and give accountability for those things to come. I hear of names being called of families who have suffered. Someone passed away because of, people said it swept under the rug. I wasn't an investigator. But we have to understand that we're going to have to live in real time saying, I'm willing to correct what is wrong. We don't need shadows following us. We need to have a board, committees, those who would be accountable for those who cannot speak for themselves. We're going to have to stand up and be people that will be accountable for everyone, and not just groups of people, but each and every citizen of this great county in this great state.
Thank you, Pastor.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Hales.
I'm Wayne Hales, and I'm here on behalf of the Columbus branch NAACP. I'm going to use my paper because if I don't, I'll be rambling, and I'll be here 10 minutes. Over the years, I've been really impressed with this community's progress and growth. But more than that, I've been and continue to be encouraged by those individuals in the community who are committed to doing the right thing. And when I first came, it was always the leadership morality and diversity meetings in the 90s, and then it became One Columbus of the early 2000s, and most recently On the Table, sponsored by the Community Foundation of the Chattahoochee Valley. This community continues to seek input from its citizens on how we can do better. The problem is, once we leave the meeting in agreement, when we get to the city council, they tend to vote along racial lines, and it never comes out the way we talked in the meeting. I would submit that passing this ordinance would be a testament to the capacity of progress that is long overdue from this second largest city in the state. Now, we can debate the percentage, but last I checked, black and browns in this community make up the majority demographic. There comes a time when you cannot ignore the demands of the people. All we are asking for is transparency and accountability. As the ordinance states, we are only seeking a climate of mutual respect and partnership between the community and public safety departments. To do so will allow us to be proactive instead of reactive in case of situations that may arise. We understand, as a civil rights organization, we have often been accused of playing the race card. I can assure you we have another card to play, and that's our voter registration card. And we are prepared to play that in November 2022. As I close, let me use the words of Louis Brandeis, who served as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States from 1916 to 1939, and he was often quoted by my good friend, Brother Love. He wrote about the wickedness of people shielding wrongdoers and passing them off, or at least allowing them to pass themselves off as honest men. At the end, he said, sunlight is said to be the best disinfectant. With that being true, when the time comes for you, from the City Council, we have hoped that when the city council has the opportunity to vote on this ordinance, we need to let it shine. If we are to be about our city slogan that says, Columbus, we do amazing, then I ask that we be amazing and pass this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Hale. Anyone else like to be heard? Anyone on the committee?
Mr. Mayor, I will add just a few things here as it relates to our next steps, and I don't even know if we're at that point. But it's obvious that in this moment, we as a committee, along with elected officials, the Charter Review Commission, and potentially other supporters, have to kind of do with Eddie Levert and the OJs once stated, and that is, give the people what they want. Right? Give the people what they want as it relates to whatever provisions, whether it be from, I know the city charter commission is seated at the moment, of seeing what adjustments can be made from the city charter standpoint to bring us to some larger consensus of how to ensure that the average citizen is ensured that their voice is heard through the Public Safety Advisory Commission, and that is obviously through subpoena power. We have an option before us today that has been brought to our attention that it's not the question if, but it will be politicized if subpoena power is left solely to a majority vote of city council. So I would ask that we do our due diligence to go back and figure out whatever mechanism needs to be put in place to make these requests valid, or make these requests tangible to the persons who have spoken today. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and members of the committee, and to all present, I just want to thank the citizens of Columbus for coming and voicing their opinions tonight. I want us to all think about where we are and where we're trying to go. And I want to thank this committee for its patience in terms of looking at this issue and talking about it. I understand that we're going to continue to talk about it and try and move forward. As I listen tonight, the words that I continue to hear are transparency, accountability, and oneness. And so as we continue to do our work, I want the citizens to know that that will be my watchword: transparency, accountability, and creating a sense of oneness here in Columbus. And that will be my thinking as we go forward to make a recommendation. And then, of course, I would encourage everyone here to go back to your member of council and talk to them about your concerns about accountability, transparency, and oneness, and let them know that we want to have a great relationship between the community and law enforcement. And one of the ways you get that is through accountability and transparency. So again, thanks to everyone for coming, and we appreciate your comments. And as from my perspective on the committee, we're going to continue to do the work.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else from the committee that want to be heard? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor Henderson and the panel, public. But I have a question. I know this is, I don't know, dumb or what, but I need to find out something. I know I keep hearing about Columbus Police Department, law enforcement, but what role do the state play in this? If that law enforcement officer is a state trooper, is there anything that the mayor office have to do with working with the Georgia State Trooper? And the reason why I ask you this, sir, is because of my son, Jarvis Likes, who was killed by a Georgia State Trooper on December 29, 2017, right here in Columbus, Georgia. When I called the mayor office, who was Teresa Tomlinson at that time, and I asked her support of telling me what was she going to do to help with this case of my son, and I was told that this was out of their hands, that this was a state situation. So, sir, what I'm asking you is, what can I expect from you being our mayor as far as when it comes down to state law enforcement officers that is involved in these excessive force killings of our people?
Yes, ma'am. Well, first of all, I'm sorry for your loss. And I tell you, the challenge we face, I know the sheriff is here, but the only entity that the Public Safety Advisory Commission has investigative powers over, the only supervisory authority that my office has or the city council has is over the police department. The sheriff is one of the county's highest elected official. So we have no control over what goes on with the sheriff. We've got a sheriff that embraces, however, the collaborative initiatives that are undertaken. But it's the same thing with the state. We can send a letter and we can try to urge careful consideration if there's something that we think has gone wrong. But we have no authority. There's no authority given to us over the state patrol, state troopers. Those are governed by the Department of Public Safety at the state level. And we actually, for the only relationship we have with state agencies is if we see something that has happened here that we think needs to be investigated, we'll pass it on to the GBI or send it to some other state investigative department so that they can take a look at it. But I understand your frustration, and I hate to tell you the same thing she did in some respects, but we just don't have the authority. We don't have control. We don't have supervision. Those individuals are governed by the state. I'm sorry. Chief. Mr. Garrett.
Ma'am, City Attorney, would it be legal under the charter if we were to change the ordinance to make it where only three members of council had to approve the subpoena being issued? Would that be possible under the charter?
Well, once you get away from having the 6 votes required, you cannot say that the council took the action, and that's who's responsible at this point under the charter for taking the subpoena action.
So that's something that would require a charter change?
I'm sorry?
That's something that would require a charter change then?
Right.
That would be, I know the Charter Review Committee is still meeting. I think Mr. Hickey's proposal for one member, I can understand that, and I certainly want transparency and accountability, but I would like to know that at least there was more than one person on council who thought it was a good idea to issue the subpoena, but 3, if there was a way we could do that, that would make it where there would never be a majority political party in power that could control it. That there would always be at least 3 members of whatever minority party there might be in office. It's the majority of Columbus. I think that would prevent political coercion. If 3 members of council had to do it, that would obviously, there would be a need for a showing by the PSAC committee, but that would also make it where there was a lower threshold for it to get passed as a subpoena. So that's something I think we should pass along to the Charter Review Commission, because that would be a compromise option.
So, Councilor Garrett, let me make sure that I understand. You're saying that 3 councilors would, in effect, sponsor the subpoena, and based on that sponsorship, it would be granted? Is that?
Sure, that would be, if there was a legal mechanism for us to do that. I just can't envision a time in our city where there wouldn't be at least 3 representatives on council of any minority in the community. So I think that if 3 members were to support a PSAC request, yes, it would be appropriate, because that would require some type of consensus, but it also wouldn't be purely party lines.
Thank you.
Welcome, Pastor Flakes.
Well, thank you, Mayor, for allowing me this opportunity to come before you. I was just sitting, and I've been following this issue for a while, and due to the pandemic, it really has inhibited and restricted some consistent or constant debate or discussion among larger groups. And so I was just listening. I wasn't going to say anything. I just wanted to listen because I do respect the voices that has already come forward and respect those who are sitting and part of the volunteer commission that you've put together. But I think the one thing that I want to just ask the commission as well as this committee to keep in mind, perception is a person's reality. Perception is a person's reality. The question is, what perception are we going to leave with as it relates to dealing with the issue at hand, that we not get caught into the weeds. I hear the options of the compromises, but I do remember hearing that it was not based upon a compromise. It was based upon a request from the city, from the citizens, that the commission would have, the Public Safety Commission would have subpoena power. I just ask that the perception is not given where in many cities they go through the motion. We call it, and forgive me, I sometimes when I speak, I've been told I get in trouble, but I'll live with that. But we have to make sure the perception is not a perception of a dog and pony show. We're just going through the motion. And if a compromise is agreed upon as a resolve, the question is who leaves benefiting from the compromise? Who holds the control? Who ultimately make the decision when it comes to accountability and transparency? And so I just urge all of us to keep our eyes on the issue, that we not get distracted by other issues. But the issue is whether the Public Safety Commission, if I'm correct, would have subpoena power. The charter can be changed, am I right? The charter can be changed. I'll leave it at that, Brother Mayor. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, sir.
I actually wanted to kind of agree with exactly what he was going to say, because I was going to mention that earlier. I think we've been in this place before, and I know that's one thing that Tanza had mentioned some years ago, even when we had, obviously, the situation with Kenny Walker some years ago. So we've been in this place before. This is new for me, but just being a citizen of Columbus and being a victim of crime myself, I can identify with people that are grieving over their family members that have either lost them through crime or lost them in terms of law enforcement. So I want to just agree with what the gentleman was just saying. We've been here before, so we do need to make sure that we're making a decision. Unfortunately, Pops is, not here today, but this was, in a sense, kind of his baby. He was pushing for us to do this. And unfortunately, he's not here, but I know that at the next town hall, he will be here. So one of the things we want to do is make sure that we are staying the course and making a decision so that we're not here in the same place, 3 or 4 years down the line, again, asking for subpoena power. Columbus is a beautiful city, a great city, but we are not without some of the things that need to be changed within our community, within our city, within our law enforcement. And so I am prayerful that we can make a decision, and so we're not back at this place.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Underwood, you got 3 minutes, sir. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of this committee. I'd like to speak in support of the ordinance as well. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about, like, with some research about how CRBs have evolved over the last century, and especially within the last few years. And so within the last 2 years, actually, like, there's been a number of CRBs that have sprung up in several jurisdictions that have been given subpoena powers as well. So Pittsburgh, for example, the city of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania held a referendum on expanding their board's powers to include subpoena powers. They held it on November 3rd, 2020, and it won 78% to 21%. Columbus, Ohio, our namesake as well, also held a referendum on creating a board, also with subpoena powers, and it won overwhelmingly 74 to 25. In Portland, Oregon, they held a referendum on creating a board, and this is, of course, a city that has been very much on the mind and lips of a lot of people, especially in mass media, regarding their demonstrations regarding police brutality and general misconduct. And that also won last year 81 to 18. So these ballot initiatives received such endorsements during the highest turnout U.S. general election since 1900. Just to put that into perspective. And citizens review boards and oversight commissions have been created since, like, in many jurisdictions since 1900, and especially during the last 50 years, they have increased in strength as well to include investigatory and subpoena powers. So basically, it may not have the most cross-partisan appeal, but it does have a lot of appeal to a lot of people who are interested in greater oversight and greater investigation into police misconduct and what have you. And also, just to throw back to something I said last year when we held our the previous discussion on the previous round of discussions on the subpoena powers as well, and especially because it's Pride Month. It's just about the end of Pride Month. According to a 2013 survey by the Williams Institute at the UCLA School of Law, 48% of the LGBTQ community who are of color and transgender that experience violence reported to be victims of police misconduct and are uncomfortable with seeking help from law enforcement officials. In a U.S. transgender survey by the National Center for Transgender Equality in 2015, 58% of the respondents experienced verbal harassment, physical/sexual assault, and being forced to engage in sexual activity to avoid arrest when interacting with the police. So, given that it is Pride Month, I do want to just drop that in there and say, sorry, I know we're running out of time. Just a brief sentence too. Yeah, I know, sorry. Since it's Pride Month, we should be very cognizant of the fact that police brutality can happen, does happen. We've seen it on the cameras all over the country, all over the world, and we should be very aware of the need for greater oversight, and hopefully Columbus can join that trend as well. Yes, thank you so much. Yes.
Mr. Mayor and Madam City Attorney, there was one issue that was put forth by a couple of people relative to how the Personnel Review Board issues subpoenas and why couldn't this board do the same? Would you speak to that and clarify how that works?
Well, council by resolution did delegate subpoena power. Actually, the subpoena power is not delegated to the Personnel Review Board. The clerk of council is authorized to issue subpoenas for personnel review matters. And that power basically only extends to jurisdiction over people who are already city employees in the city system. So it's not, subpoenaing someone who's been a part of an incident out on the street to come in. It's just for city employees who have chosen voluntarily to appeal their discipline. They're allowed to have their fellow employees who might testify for them subpoenaed. And it's so that, quite honestly, so that the supervisors will let them off of work to go testify.
All right. Yes, sir. Well, okay.
I'm a little naive, I guess. I'm hearing I'm trying to understand, what on earth can this group do that is so severe and horrible, it's going to destroy the police department. I'm trying to figure out, what is this boogeyman thing? What is it that they, at the end of the day, a group of people that want to review something that don't exist, that can't do anything. If it does exist, and it should be examined. I'm trying to understand, what is this problem? I really don't get it. And then the other thing about it is this. Why is the council can't trust one of their members? Got to have 3 of them. I mean, you don't go to the bathroom, you got to take 2 other people with you. So I'm trying to say one person on the council. And then the other thing about it, that God did not deliver anybody on the council with no special knowledge. You were a citizen like everybody else. You make the same thought and process. You don't know nobody no more than anybody else. So I'm trying to get off this high horse. You're just a citizen who representing the citizen. That's all. Stop tripping.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, Mr.
Yes, my name is Louis Abram. I've been listening.
Hang on, let me back this up. Dr. Hood, if a committee member wants to respond to that, they certainly may.
Okay, that's all.
Yep, no, I appreciate it. Let's start over. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Louis Abram. I've been a citizen here for about over 21 years, and I've seen the changes, good and bad and whatnot, but what really indelible on my mind is the Kenneth Walker murder of 2003, and I think this Public Safety Advisory Commission is only only to pacify the people here in terms of just to get it off the issue, get it off the news or whatever. But you got to put some teeth into it, and you got to have a subpoena power, and from what I understand, when you're summons for jury duty, they summon you for jury. You don't have to have a special degree or anything, or certificate or anything, and it's like anything else, like for jury duty or grand jury or whatever, and it just seems to be infallible that you can't come up with to do anything like that. I mean, it's just because like what one gentleman said about the other cities have come up with this program, this review board. So I think that you definitely need to put some teeth into it, because like I said, that they just put it out there just to throw it out there just for a pacification program, for just to keep the people quiet, whatever. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms.
Thank you.
Elamine, I'll give you 3 more minutes, but we
No, I don't need 3 minutes. First of all, Chief Blackman, I'm sorry I missed your call when you called me back, but I did tell Katina Williams that I needed a number. So if you could try me again, I would appreciate it. Counselor Barnes is my counselor, District 1. I hear that he's been excused for the evening.
Yes, ma'am.
But I remember that Judy Thomas, the at-large counselor who represents all of us, I thought she was appointed to this body, I don't see her.
Judy had surgery the other day. She wasn't able to make it this evening.
Oh, so she's excused as well?
Yes, ma'am, she is.
Well, I hope she feels better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll pass that along.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Alyssa Williams. The first question that I have, and it probably won't be fully answered tonight, but I'd like to know, for the people who are opposed, what is your reason for opposition? Is there actually, do you have a valid reason, or it's just, no, I don't think that should happen? The second thing is, what is the actual proposal? I feel like I've heard these bits and pieces, I've heard amendments, I've heard this, but if this is going to be something that council is going to vote on, I'd like to hear the full proposal and I think that it should be available to the rest of the citizens.
Brother Mayor. So I guess thank you, Ms. Williams, for the question. So what has been presented tonight was that it would take a majority vote of city council for a subpoena to be issued. That was what was presented tonight, and that went through a lot of massaging. But what we have heard tonight is that the public, or those who have spoken, do not want what has been presented, right? And so what the next step, I guess, Brother Mayor and committee members, is that we need to go back and figure out what mechanisms need to transpire to be able to, in fact, do what we've heard tonight from the people who have spoken.
Well, and to that point, about the only question I can answer is because I'm not on the committee, and just in terms of why this was created. Actually, this committee was to put together by Councilor Garrett and Councilor Barnes to determine if that compromise or that other option could be supported. And the only task by this group is to say yes or no. And then if they say no, then it goes back to council. And any counselor can call for either or none of those ordinances. This group did a great job, I think, at least working for the best option they could come up with at the time. But that's why this is so critical, I think, to get the input of the citizens so that the group, this committee, will be able to determine if they are on the right track or not. So I think that's where we are, is this group will come back for another meeting and just determine yay or nay.
So, Brother Mayor, just for clarity, what you just offered is that we could go through the motions of the work that we've been doing and submit something to City Council, and City Council can reject it altogether, right?
Yeah, this is non-binding on council. That's the way it was set up from the beginning at the request of the two councilors. It was simply at that point to have a few meetings, I think, to determine whether or not that compromise could be reached. And if not, then they would just say no and it would go back to council.
Okay.
But now this, as we've stated before, this committee, if they undertake an additional effort, I mean, to look at some other aspects or options, I mean, that can be decided by the committee.
Can we pull up the language one more time to address our question about what's in the ordinance? I think it was in the PowerPoint. So I know we're saying that the citizens are requesting subpoena power. I do just want to back up a little bit. So this two ordinances, they were created in response to an incident where there was a use of force. And when I was still chair of Public Safety Advisory Commission, when we found out about it, we reached out to City Council and the mayor, and they were already addressing it. And so our biggest frustration was, why didn't we find out about this earlier, right? Where is that transparency that we wanted? So this combined ordinance provides that transparency. I know everyone's been asking for transparency. It provides it, and I think it's doing it in a way that no other city is doing it, where citizens are automatically, this group of citizens automatically getting these use of force reports and reviewing it, right? It's not optional. This is part of their responsibility on this committee to review it. And they may not be public safety officials, and so they may not have the money or the knowledge or the resources maybe to subpoena it themselves, but they can just say, hey, look, this looks funny. I don't think he should have done that. City Council, you need to look at this and raise it. And City Council has the already defined power and money so they can subpoena that person and provide the accountability or issue it to GBI. And so when we asked what the concern was of having it, I think there is a concern that if you start giving subpoena power to the Public Safety Advisory Commission, one, can they legally use it? Because I know there's that concern in Atlanta. And two, could they screw something up? Could they start subpoenaing someone and they start providing information, and then that suddenly invalidates like the real process of them getting a process going forward. So I think it kind of alleviates that risk of saying, hey, do these average citizens who don't understand the law, could they take a misstep and then let an officer who should be tried off due to some technicality? We don't want that to happen. So do we have a mechanism so one, we get the transparency, we can view it and see it, and two, we escalate it to city council. And I know when I heard a lot of this a year ago, a lot of people talked about national reform. I think what's appealing about this current ordinance is that it doesn't cost any money and it provides transparency. I think other cities should be adopting something similar. They should have public safety advisory commissions like Columbus. They should have that use of force reports provide transparency. And I think that'd be a great example for other cities to follow so that we start seeing transparency in other cities as well. So I know I said a lot, so hopefully I help provide some clarity.
Well, my only question in response to that is you said that it could mess up a possible officer that has done something wrong, but if they're requesting a subpoena, then that means that they haven't been held accountable up to that point. So that means that there's not an investigation, there's nothing that's going on, which is the whole reason why we need it.
Right, so to clarify, it's not that nothing would happen, it's that it would go to city council who has the proper resources to make something happen. So similar to the previous incident, it went to GBI, it's getting it handled by professionals rather than unelected citizens.
Okay, and let me say, just in the essence of time, we've got, Mike was telling me that we've got a kind of a cutoff around 7. So what we'll do is take this one more speaker, and remember, you have time. You can still get your comments to this board, and we will have, at the request of this city, this group, we will have one more public hearing so that Pop Barnes, who was sort of the author of it, will be able to attend too. So.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson, which was what I keep hearing. Councilor Bond is absent, but we got Walker Garrett sitting here. And those two were the ones that came up with this commission. Councilor Garrett, what can we expect from you after hearing this going over and over and over again? And we have gotten nothing. It may be another public hearing, it may not. But because you're present, what are you going to go back to your counselors to say to make sure that the citizens get what they want? Because you are also an elected official, and if one is absent, we have you sitting right here. What can you promise us? What can you tell us? How can you grab everybody together? Because if you got a public safety advisory commission who they don't have subpoena power, the only people that have subpoena power is city councilor, what can we expect of you, sir?
I've been ready since this whole issue was brought up to bring this ordinance forward. This ordinance is what we can do legally without a charter review vote. We could give one person power if the charter was changed, and that means we're waiting for a couple of years. That means we're waiting for a charter review decision, a recommendation by that committee, and then a vote by the people. Or we can use the power we have now. 5 to 4, or 5 votes or 6 votes, as Red McDaniel, who was my predecessor, said, you can do anything. And I can assure you that I would be happy to sponsor this and bring it forward. And this community sentiment should be relayed to the Charter Review Commission, because if there are further changes that are wanted and desired, take that to your Charter Review members. Look at who was appointed by your counselors and by your mayor. But I want action now.
Yes, thank you.
Look, this is the time for me that I let people just hate on me. They're going to hate because they already are on my non-discrimination ordinance, which please read that law if you have a chance and look at the ordinance we've drafted, because I am about equality for all, and I am about uniting our city. And I'm happy to take this ordinance, the one we've already got drafted and we have consensus on, I'm happy to sponsor it. We just want your seal of approval, and I know Councilor Barnes, as the original author of this, wants to be heard and wants to hear everyone. But as soon as y'all are ready, you've got my name to attach to it.
All right, and sir, did you have something? If you would, I'm gonna ask you to be brief because I don't want this screen to go dark.
Matter of fact, I want to address something that I never, well, first of all, my name is Freddie Williams, that I haven't heard mentioned tonight, but there's a bunch of people here now who are in favor of the subpoena power. But let me just say, because the last time I saw it, or a couple of times ago I saw a meeting, and people were fired, police officers and everything, this committee or board is not here to try to take away the power of the police, not here to try to judge the police, and not here, the gentleman here mentioned about professional. It's not about, even professionals screw stuff up, and they screw it up bad. So all we want to do is look, get the evidence. You see the evidence? Now, everything is transparent. We see everything. But they still turn around and go the other way. People that should be punished, they don't get punished. They walk, they get slapped on the wrist, even with the transparency. So what we want is get out here, let's get our citizen review board with subpoena power, period. And it's not about being professional, non-professional. And anybody know, simple, let the evidence lead your investigation. So you don't have to have all kind of degrees and all kind of experience for that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And listen, I want to thank all of you for participating. As State Representative Hughley said, that's a big, big part of this community and the way it's governed. So we thank you for your input. We've heard you loud and clear. Tamika's been taking notes down here, and we've got it on record. And if we are able to arrange another public meeting, we will publicize it, and we hopefully will see you back again. So thank all of you, and thank this. If you would, join me in a round of applause for this committee. They've done a really, really tough job.
Mr. Mayor, just very quickly. So if citizens have further comment or input, what's the mechanism for that to be made known?
They need to let this committee know.
Okay.
They need to reach out to representatives of the committee. What we can do, I'll talk to the committee about the best way to publish their contact information.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yep. Thank you all. Good night.